So what is it the seeker's looking for? What is it that you're looking for when you come onto this path? In spirituality or going to different teachers? What is it that the seeker's looking for? Enlightenment, flashing lights, big dramas. What is it that the seeker wants? Then you could give it to the seeker and it could stop seeking. That's a joke. But what is it that you're actually looking for from enlightenment?
Yes. I think it's unconditional happiness or unconditional joy. So normally I can see just in my own life that everything is conditional, that I can only get happiness if I have something that's external. So it's finding continuous joy or whatever you might want to call it without having any external stimulus or reason for that joy, causeless joy or causeless happiness.
Yeah. And this is the weird bit about the whole thing, is that who you actually are before the seeking starts is causeless happiness. So what the seeker's looking for is who you truly are. Is who you are when the seeker or the sense of self isn't there trying to get something. Causeless happiness. And happiness sounds like an emotion. I don't mean the ecstatic woohoo. I mean contentment and wholeness and completion with life. It requires that seeking energy and that seeking voice to say this isn't enough, to give the impression that there is more that's needed. Who you are is always whole and always complete. And the way that you know this is if you look at the dynamic of seeking. So what the seeker is seeking for pleasure and trying to avoid pain. And what do I mean by pleasure? Seeking for, maybe before you get into spirituality, it'd be more material things. So maybe nice house, family, good job, successful, being highly regarded in the community. Whatever it is you have as the image of who and what you want to be. So there's a seeking for the house or seeking for a partner. And the mind thinks that when it gets the house, that is its happiness. That is going to give the mind what it wants. But when the house is got, it's not the object of the house which gives happiness, it's the seeking falling away. But the mind associates it with the house. So for a moment, or momentarily, maybe for a day, 2 days, the seeking falls away and there's a sense of happiness. But then the mind thinks of a new thing it wants. I've got to buy furniture for the house. I've got to do something with the lawn. I've got to get in a landscape design or whatever it is. I've got to get it decorated. And then when that's done, the mind thinks, I've got to get a car. So it's always the seeking falling away. It's never the object. But because it requires getting the object for the seeking to fall away, the mind always associates it with objects. So then it will go on to partner. It's in getting a partner. But also, when these pleasures are got, there's also a claiming which makes the pleasure even higher. So you'll get the partner and the seeking falls away, and then the mind comes in and goes, yes, you've done it, you've got the one you wanted. And then there's an even higher pleasure. But what you actually want is the seeking to fall away. It's never the object. It's never found in any object in the world. Who you are is happiness. Who you are is everything you want. It's just the mind playing the game that it's in objects, that it's in the world, that it's in spirituality, that it's in reading or the intellect. But who you are is in the world, is in getting something from the world. But who you truly are is absolutely whole and complete when there's not the dynamic that I'm incomplete and I need more. It requires that energy and that thought. And the seeking gives a whole impression of time and space and life happening, because the mind's constantly obsessing with what it wants to get, what it doesn't want to experience. So maybe it doesn't want to experience, say, something bad happening, so obsessed with how to try to stop that bad thing happening. So running out of money, or someone mugging you, or a friend being rude. So the mind obsesses on that, and it gives an impression that something's happening in space and time, that a separate self exists, and they're walking through the world, and they've got to make right or wrong decisions. And then also the obsessive thinking about what you want in the future, what you need to get. If I just go to Thailand now, or if I go and see this teacher, or if I go to an Ayurvedic doctor or get a massage. And this obsessive thinking and going around in the mind gives an impression of a separate self living in space and time. When that falls away, there's just experiencing in this moment. There's just this happening. The sensation on the skin, the views, the sight, the smells. And there is no time and space. Time and space only arises in an idea, and when that seeking or that sense of self isn't there, it just becomes this moment again. The only thing that is constant is this experience. Always, always this. It's always the now. And it's those thoughts of seeking, trying to get from the future, and you can't exactly get things from the past, but trying to correct things from the past or avoid things from the past, gives an impression of a separate self. When that falls away, there's nothing there. It covers up the fact that there's nothing inside, that we're absolutely empty. We're emptiness watching.
But who's experiencing the moment then?
Nobody. There's just perception. Who you are is just empty perception for nobody. It's so there is a looking that's happening without thoughts or mental interpretation. There's a looking that doesn't require thoughts, doesn't require memories. You might know it from the morning. When you wake up in the morning, there's no thought of you, of anything. There's just awareness coming in. Just watching.
Because as soon as I feel it, I have a thought to it. That feels like that.
Yeah. And this is the knower that knows nothing, which is happening all the time. It's just the thoughts, the continuous thinking, distracts from that there's something knowing. It's not the intellect, it's not thoughts, it's not the mind that's telling you who you are all the time. There's something looking out of all your senses now. It's completely empty. Something. You, it's who you are. It's just the mind doing this whole dance in front of it, giving you the impression that your thoughts, the feelings, the sensation, the contraction, that is happening in you. It is not who you are. The thoughts, the feelings, the sensation are as much you as this pole here. It's all happening inside of consciousness. I used to, yeah?
Just a reflection. Last few weeks I've been talking to some people and listening to all these awakening experiences happening, and it seems like people that have an awakening experience get very possessed by this experience, as it's like the awakened ego grows, and today I was experiencing this and talk to people about all this that's going on, and this seems to me like a big trap sometimes. Maybe, I don't know. You get identified with what's happening during your awakening, and like now I only have 6 years left until I'm liberated. You know,
Yeah.
this kind of.
The one that yaks on about your liberation is the ego.
Yeah.
Liberation is the end of the one who cares whether you're liberated or not. It doesn't need to tell everyone, it doesn't need to announce it, it doesn't need to speak about it or think about it. It's just what it is. It's the end of that one that's saying, I think this is it. I think I might have experienced it. I think in another year it will have stabilized. Da, 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 da. So here, if someone asks me what liberation is, it's the end of caring whether you're liberated or not. Because to care whether you're liberated is seeking something more than what is. And there's just happiness. There's no need to be liberated. But yeah, the spiritual ego loves to claim it and tell people about it.
In this empty awareness, I find my breath is in this intimate partner or me for eternity. And when I'm in that emptiness, I find that expansion fully. I'm able to be what I can experience until I realize I'm that, and I'm no longer that. For instance, if I'm empty and it rains, I can experience all the rain is for what it is in that moment, because I have no memory of it and no attachments to it. And at that moment when I recognize that, it's that recognition that all of a sudden I realize I'm not that anymore. And it's this constant arrival of this fullness that returns me to the emptiness the moment I recognize it. So am I also that fullness? Am I also that emptiness, experiencing fullness in that? Or is it just the rise of something while I'm in that emptiness? Am I only the emptiness experiencing the fullness, or am I also the fullness with the emptiness the same? Does that make any sense?
Hang on. No, I'm not too sure of your question.
Am I everything also?
Yeah,
Only through the recognition of the emptiness?
yeah. Because everything arises inside of you, inside of that watching. And it's you're both. You're the emptiness, goes on infinity, and inside that emptiness, everything is arising.
And to stay everything, I have to acknowledge that I am nothing. I have to return to this state of emptiness in order to be everything. Otherwise, I am lost if I don't return to emptiness. If I don't return to this eternal nothingness, I'm in a state of ego or a state of attachment. I apologize, it's really hard to bring into words. I can only-
Yeah. Yeah. But it's not an intellectual returning. I'm sure you're not meaning that. Like, it's not somebody returning to that nothingness. It's just that that's what happens. And you live at both simultaneously. Like, the absolute emptiness but fullness. But not somebody doing that as an intellectual idea, but I don't get the sense that's what you meant.
No, not at all. And the reason why I mention it is when I run into other beings, even through many meditations and awarenesses, I find the emptiness in the person.
Yeah.
But I'm sad sometimes because I feel like the fullness has been almost taken from the experience. When in reality, I want to be here completely holy with this being.
Yeah.
So
it does, in some way, because you're no longer relating to stories, in some way it does take away from the relationship you have with people, because you're not relating to them through stories or through their stories or who they think they are. You're relating to them as emptiness. So to the other person it might not be so interesting or fun meeting someone that's only relating to them as emptiness. But there's nothing wrong with stories, but here what happens is a lack of interest in them. So if someone starts talking too much about their story, my attention naturally just goes to looking in a different direction. It might seem a bit rude, but it's just that the interest just isn't there anymore. So in relationships, and there can be, even here, sadness, like when you're around your family or your mum, because you can see that they want more from the situation, but that just the energy just doesn't go there anymore, because you're not relating to a person anymore. Well, you are relating to a person, but you're not relating to the story of who everyone thinks they are. You're just relating to an emptiness that's expressing itself now, to who and what they are now. And then they tell you about their stories, but you don't really have any belief of them. So,
Is that emptiness that you're offering them also, it's unconditional. It is of a deeper love, I think.
it's deep, it's pure love.
Right.
Whether or not they see that, though, is a different matter. To them, it might be seen as the opposite, because they only relate through stories. And they have an idea that compassion is through relating through the stories or making the stories better.
You could also say like through interpretation. It's not so much stories sometimes, it's so fast, your own interpretations, that you usually get caught in your own, it's like, it's happening and then there's interpretation and then I think this is it, or, yeah.
What do you mean by this is it?
From your side, you perceive, and that's it. From my side, usually, I perceive, I interpret, and then I think this is it.
Yeah. This is how it is.
Yeah, how it is, but it's not.
No.
But it's so convincing.
Yeah, these stories are so convincing. The way you look at people with stories, so many filters. You're never seeing someone, you're seeing your interpretation of someone and how their story is affecting your story. And the funny thing is you're not the stories arise in you, but they're not who you are, they're not who the other is. Who you are is the watcher in which everything's contained. So you interpret another from the way that your story is. And the way you interpret the other actually is through what they can give you, how they can benefit you. It's all a trading. It's all how they benefit you, in what way their story will help you or give you or disadvantage you, what you can get from them. And then we call that love.
And this even happens when you do something, because I remember twice after Satsang I came to you and said I apologize for being a bit harsh. And twice you said, oh, I didn't perceive it like this. So it was like my own judgment about how I reacted.
Yeah.
That's quite revealing.
But you're so convinced that's what's actually happening. So I don't know if you heard what Michael said. He said that he perceived he'd been harsh, so he thought I would perceive that. So he's perceived he's been harsh, and then he's thought that I would, so he's come up and apologised. But this is what we're doing continuously with people, putting stories on them. We have no idea what's happening. The empty watching consciousness has no ideas, no thoughts, it's just watching. It's only ever the mind that's interpreting situations. But it's not always egoic. The mind can interpret situations just simply like, this is an apple, this is an orange, this person's shouting. this person's, but the ego is the one that creates the stories about it that go on in space and time for quite a while and go brr, 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 brr. But the mind still thinks. The mind's a great tool. But the stories in which we look at people, yeah?
Thank you. For example, to see the thing what is talking now from you to us.
Yeah.
Is that also your ego telling our ego what to do? Or is it coming out from, of course, coming out from your emptiness?
Yeah. Well, actually, that's what
Like I am
everything's
talking.
coming out from. Everything's coming out from emptiness. It's just the ego,
Yeah.
the way the ego's written, is the ego thinks that it's doing it. The dynamic of the ego, or the seeker, is to think, I do this, I'm the one talking, I'm the one saying good things or bad things, I'm the one not being spiritual. But that's also coming out of emptiness. And that's the play, how emptiness creates the impression of separation and individual free will. But there's never individual free will. It's all God. It's all life. And here, it's just the falling away of that dynamic and that belief that there's a separate self here doing. And that's all that's fallen away here, is the belief that there is a separate person here existing and that there are separate people out there. And when that falls away, it's seen that you're absolute emptiness in which everything arises in. But none of it is more you. So the thoughts and the feelings are no more you than anything out there. They're just objects arising in you. And you are nothing. No thing. And yet, at the same time, you're everything because it's inside of you.
The outside world is perceived as actually being an internal world. Are you kind of making that
Not
statement?
internal is internal inside this body. Internal is inside consciousness. Inside the
That makes
watching.
sense, yeah.
And it's like here now, everything you see, there's just an idea that gives the impression that you're that body-mind mechanism watching. When that falls away, everything becomes you because there's that thought that I'm this and she's that.
Of course, you see us and we see you.
Yeah.
And if I understood it right, that you're talking to us, and they are thoughts, beautiful thoughts coming also inside.
Yeah.
And we think that it is our ego, and it is coming into our emptiness or clearing the way to our emptiness.
Yeah.
And you're trying to tell us something to clear up how it is,
Yeah.
how reality is to see.
But that's actually not what's happening. That's what it appears like. What's actually happening is this is life stream, and this is consciousness talking to consciousness. And in that dream, this body-mind mechanism can't liberate that body-mind mechanism through these words. It can just be that consciousness decides to stop dreaming separation there. But consciousness dreams in cause and effect and apparent time and space, and very logically. So it dreams up a teacher to enlighten the student, but it's never a teacher and it's never a student, it's all consciousness. And consciousness liberates you, not the teacher, because consciousness wants to experience liberation. And here, there's no beliefs or thoughts that I can liberate them, because there's no I here and there's no I there. There's just consciousness expressing itself in different forms, and then the body-mind mechanism goes, but why would you do that? Because there's no one here doing this. This is just speaking happening. Exactly the same as how it's happening there, but there's just a belief that you're doing it. Maybe not all the time, maybe just some of the time. Sometimes maybe there's just experience happening. And it's happening to everyone that there's just experience happening. And then the ego just comes in every so often and claims it. So you're walking here, walking along the road, you see a cow, you see the trees, and there's not even a sense you're walking, the legs are just doing. There's just watching, perceiving of it. Then you get here, your mind goes, oh yes, I've walked myself here, or I've got myself here. But really what was happening, there was just experiencing, just moving, and there wasn't an ego in there going left, right, turn, cow, tree. It was just experiencing. And then when you actually get here, the mind's like, I definitely chose to come here. I made a right decision in choosing coming here, or a wrong decision, whatever pops up. And that's the way that life and consciousness paints in a separate self and gives the illusion that there's somebody there through the idea of free will. The idea that there is somebody there that can choose. And then it creates all these thoughts and these dynamics, thinking about the past and the future, how it can choose in the future, how it can get in the future, how it can avoid things that have happened in the past. And that compulsive, repetitive thinking in the absolute nothingness, because when you shut your eyes there's nothingness, and that compulsive, repetitive thinking gives the impression of somebody existing in space and time. But when that falls away just for a second, then you shut your eyes, and even the idea I am this body falls away, there's nothing there. There's sensation, but if there's not I am this body, it's sensation happening in absolute emptiness. And the same is when the eyes open. If there's not the thought I am this body, and you are other separate cells sitting there, there's just watching happening, and there's no separation from anything. You're the empty space in which everything's arising. It's sometimes easier at first to do it with the eyes shut though. And so the last thought, belief that goes is I am the body. Or the core basis thought is I am this body. And when that's thought, when that energy comes in that I'm the body, then there's a separate self that's got to look after this body, stop this body getting hurt, and get pleasures for this body and avoid pains. But that never is the truth of it. That's just consciousness way of creating separation. So you're never this body, you were always just the empty watching, and the body arose in this. It's like the screen of a film, suddenly believing it is the film. The screen in which the film's projected on, suddenly is like, there's a belief that it is the film.
And the film is over and the screen is still there.
Yeah. And the funny thing is the film's always changing, the experience is always changing. The screen carries on thinking, I'm definitely the film, when there's one thing that never changes. And that's the watching, that's the awareness, or experiencing, beingness, whatever word you like. Beingness is a nice word. Because awareness gives the impression of someone being aware.
When the searcher drops off, or the sense of doership, is there any qualities that arise more often than others? Say, like kindness versus dominance, or love, fear?
The character changes, it seems, when the doership falls off. So doership emotions stop. So like blame, they've done something wrong, they shouldn't have done that. When there is no one seen there or no one seen here, then that doesn't arise. There's still the arising of, you don't become a passive being that everything's walked over. There's still no, and how I want it like this, and this shouldn't happen, but shouldn't happen in a sense of it's empty. It's not somebody's fault, or it's not your fault. There's still, you don't become completely passive. Blame, guilt, which is an opposite one. I've done something wrong, I shouldn't have done that. And pride, yes, I got it. Or shame, feeling embarrassed about something you've done. Or expectation, so an idea of something, a situation held up here, and then wanting that situation to live up to it. So when I go to Thailand, I'm going to be lying on the beach drinking my pina colada, and then when you get there and you're in a cesspit and you book the wrong hotel, it's just the way it is.
don't know if it's the same thing, but in moments where sort of a compulsion to do something in order to gain something drop off, there seems to be a playfulness comes up.
Yeah.
Like I was walking around the ashram this morning and I was like secretly following a guy, and it didn't seem like it was a deliberate pursuit that was happening.
It was just fun.
He was an odd guy, and I was like, and that kind of childish playfulness
Yeah.
seems to come up.
Yeah, it's childlikeness. It really is.
And that
Going
would
back.
be a common feature.
Yeah, definitely. But not childlikeness like, there's no certain way to say it. It rises differently in everybody. But childlikeness is in everything's new. It's only the seeker that's constantly retelling things and deadening it. Everything's incredibly new and wondrous. It doesn't make sense, this whole world. The adult or the seeker begins to think that they've made sense of it and it makes sense. It really doesn't. And that dynamic falls away. So you're just doing senselessly. Like a child again. Like following someone for no motive or reason. The seeker's always living in what will this give me? What can I get from it in the future? And so things like that, or sitting, watching people or animals, but so little motive to get anything. Obviously there's natural dynamics of needing to earn money that arise, but it's no longer from that seeking energy, that compulsive thinking about it.
And that can be a steady bleaching that takes place that infuses your life.
And then one day you just realise that it's gone, or you maybe like maybe you realise the slow process of it, like Ramesh Balsaka. It took 2 weeks, and then he suddenly realised that the seeker had been gone for 2 weeks, and then the thought popped up: oh, the seeker's gone. Well, there's a change.
Going back to the nothingness and the love, I'm more speaking of love beyond the emotional attached aspect of it. Even the child in this empty sensation of experience is drawn towards the mother, or without really the attachments, more of just, it's almost beyond itself to not reach out to that unconditional love that's there. The same in nature, everything in nature, surrendering its natural responses to exceed itself. Flowers don't smell or see how beautiful they are. Orange trees aren't eating their own oranges, they're in a state of equanimity. But by that surrenderance, it still seems this draw towards this love or this unconditional state. And so when I go back to even meditation, the emptiness is a great vehicle for me to pull myself away from the story, but only to fall into the current of unconditional movement. There's something for sure that I feel, and maybe it's still my story, but the story leads me to service beyond my own attachments. I'm just wondering if that's even a spiritual naiveness of, a love story that I'm telling myself, or if there's a deeper emptiness underneath that love I don't know what I'm trying to say. I just really feel like there's more than emptiness. I feel like emptiness is really even the cushion before you fall into continuous equal love, unconditional love.
Yeah, but not love as a heart sensation experience.
Right.
Yeah, everything. To know you, to be everything. For everything to be you is absolute love. But not as a heart sensation.
I feel it there, for sure.
Yeah, but it's confused. Yeah. Because often what happens is there is the opening of the heart chakra, but the love that I'm talking about isn't a feeling. but that often coincides with it. But to think it's the heart chakra love, or that feeling of love, will perpetuate seeking, because that love will come and go, because it's a feeling.
So how do you experience love?
Sorry?
How do you experience love?
Love, so there's different types of love. Like there is the feeling, the sensation of love, but the love that I'm talking about, as in everything is you, therefore it's absolute love, isn't a sensation or a feeling.
It's just a knowing.
I don't really know how to put it into words. It's the absence of any hate, because all of it's you, but it's not an experience, and it's not a feeling. It's just naturally you and what you are. So therefore, when you get mugged, blame just doesn't arise, because it's you. It's absolute unconditional love, but it's not a sensational feeling. However, the heart chakra often opens, and therefore what happens to a lot of seekers is they get stuck in the idea that it's the heart opening love. But it's really hard to put into words this, because if you can hear it, if everything's you, it's the end of all hate. Because everything's inside of you. It's the end of perceiving all hate, because there's no separation. But it's not a bodily sensation. However, often a pleasurable love feeling happens, feeling in the heart, particularly when this subject's talked about. But it's not a feeling. I used to find that so confusing when teachers talked about it, because there was such a craving for heart chakra love here, for the experience, the physical sensation of love. And so when teachers talked about love, it was like there was a longing for this heart opening love, and then they'd say it's not a feeling, and I'd be like, ugh, what is it then? You can't really put it into words unless you can hear it's the absence of all hate, because everything is you. It's the best way in which I can put it. Unless you can hear that, then I can't put it into any more clearer words. Just that it's not a feeling. I'm not talking about a feeling. A feeling comes and goes. This is beyond the body sensation.
See if a question comes up. I don't know. I'm going to start sharing, because you talked about hate, and the more it is seen inside, what's happening, the sensation, the feeling, the more I realize that when the seeker's here, it's like a package of hate. So you just said that separation, or the perception of separation, is hate. Seeking or doership is hate as well. Refusal of what is hate.
Yeah. Roger used to be so harsh with me about this one. Oh, no, the seeker's not all hate. The seeker is hate. Because it's, I think I can do better.
The I is already hate in
Yes,
that case.
because it's resisting life.
And everything
As
that
it
everything that is going to seek, meaning more, is hate. Less avoidance, or how do you say? You know, we are all very much caught up, I believe, in curing patterns, because this is sponsored by the wanting to avoid feelings, wanting to avoid the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and hate is maybe the worst, or guilt maybe, or something. The very act of trying to do something about it is more hate in the pressure cooker.
Yeah.
And so that's more or less what I see. I see that it's just a trap of hate, and maybe a wanting not to see that it's hate.
Yeah. And seeing it all as hate, then it's understood better, because a lot of what the seeker builds up resistance to is, particularly it seems in spirituality, is say murderers, or people who don't save the environment, or people that hurt animals. And in spirituality particularly, there seems to be a lot of dislike of these people. But when you see that all seekings hate, you really see that all seekings hate, there is no difference between seeking for someone to stop killing animals and the one that kills animals. Ah! What am I saying? And then when that's seen, you cannot any longer blame the one that's the murderer or the paedophile.
But it's amazing how just because the seeker is nothing else than a second thought arriving after action and claiming it. It's incredible how this little thing
Gives the impression that you're there.
Yeah.
That I'm here. I mean, really, all there is experience.
and all the emotion of hate coming with it. It's like a package. You can't put just a little bit on
And
the
then the seeker
side.
tries to tell itself and experiences hate. That's because of the murderer or the paedophile. I'm really a nice person. If you're experiencing hate or recognizing hate in the paedophile and the murderer, then you're experiencing it yourself, and then it will go off in the story how nice I am. I'm such a nice person. I don't kill animals. I don't hurt children. How dare the people do this? This is a terrible thing. But you've perceived it. And the fact that you've perceived dislike for what they do, you too are in hate. But it's not your fault, because there's no one there whose fault it is. It's just the dynamics of separation that's arising. And sometimes I can see that because it's so hard with language, putting this into language. And so it often sounds, when I'm talking about the seeker, that I'm talking about a you who's doing the seeker, who could stop the seeker. I'm not saying that. There's not a you in there that's doing the seeker or can stop the seeker, or it's just the dynamics of consciousness and how it creates separation. But it sounds like, by the way that I speak often, or I think it sounds like, that I'm saying that there is somebody there that can change these seeking patterns. I'm not saying that. That's just the seeker and the ego as well.
So the fear of experiencing those very tough emotions is that very tough emotion.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. It's like I see that first of all, there's nothing I can really do, but then everything is like the, as you say, like the hamster in the wheel.
Yeah.
Trying to feel the rage, let it go.
Yeah.
When that comes, like I'm going to do something with a purpose or something, this is more fear, this is more hate every time that this arrives. You know what I mean? And trying to do nothing because I understood the thing, or trying to understand, is again fear and hate on the platter.
But you're not doing that. You're not getting it wrong. That's just the dynamics of seeking.
A lot of teaching says that without the judgment of wrongness, the seeker cannot stand. So when an intellectual mind hears this, he goes, okay, now I'm going to aim at the judgment of wrongness. But that very aim is what is judgment. You know.
You know, the ego holds together because we're trying to make sense. As long as we believe anything makes sense, the ego is alive. Once you realize you're just making it up, you're making it all up, it doesn't make any sense at all, then
Yeah, because meaning is hate. I mean, it's judgment.
yeah.
It's saying what is separated into this and this and this and this.
Once you start to conceptualize things, and then it appears to make sense, and that is really a huge trap, because that holds the ego actually together.
And so you will not judge neither the action of the pedophile nor the pedophile itself. No judgment for any of that.
It's not saying that then I would happily give my child over to a paedophile, or that I would necessarily move into a house next door to a paedophile. Like, you can often hear this message and think that it's really passive. This being's actually quite fiery, and but there's just not the blame. The mugging happens, and then it's on to talking and telling the police and telling people, and there's not the idea it was their fault, they shouldn't have done it. There's just the next action that happens to try and get money back for the phones or whatever it is.
And it's not like you're condoning like the action either. I mean, it's not like there's a blaming or a hate about it, but you can see that sort of the way that life would like to express itself through you is maybe not that way. Yeah, it's interesting because the mind, like, it's so easy for the mind to have like some judgment on that, you know, like, I just noticed inside of me, you know, it's like, there's some part of me that always wants to say like, oh, that's wrong, you know, like, and so like, you know, how to live my life in a way where I'm not judging it, but at the same time, I'm not condoning it. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the correct alignment so that I can be in that place?
It's not that you need to be in that place or work it out. It's just when the attention goes to the empty watching, to the one that watches, and it's not going to mentally debate that person being right or wrong. It's just that it might be the action to move away from the paedophile, but then it's not really thought about again. There's just the watching happening. So there's no standpoint, there's no position in which to look at it.
It's almost just like an automatic happening.
Yeah, there's just a moving away. Like maybe not. Maybe if I was living next door to a paedophile, maybe I'd stay there. But whatever the action's going to be, and there might be a few thoughts around it. But when there's no one there and there's just watching, it's then just do. You just do, but for nobody.
In that sense, I would like to share something. I mean, it's within the story. So, but there's a therapy method. It's called systemic work, and you put people for a real situation. But these are like, we could do it here now. Let's say I'm like the father for something. You might be the mother, and there might be a few children, and then the whole system becomes alive right now. And I mean, I was in positions like murder and abusers and also like victims, and it's really amazing when you're in that position and then you feel everything like this murderer feels, and then it becomes absolutely clear that at that point the murderer had actually no choice then to kill. And it's a horrible state actually. It's absolutely horrible, it's devastating. But at the same time, once you get out again, it's like you're so humble. I mean, in the story still, but you see what I mean? It's like a deep understanding that, I mean, any judgment is just absolutely foolish. I mean, who I am too.
The murderer, the paedophile, really couldn't do anything else. If you go into the story, so if we go into cause and effect, and we look at no choice in cause and effect, their life, everything that came before led to the present action. So the fact maybe they came from an abusive mother and then felt very powerless around women, and then when they got older in relationships again felt very powerless, and so the urge came up to feel powerful in a relationship, and then one day they killed a woman. It's never a separate self doing there. That's just how life writes dynamics. It's through apparent cause and effect, and this story and somebody being there doing something. And it really couldn't. They had no choice but to do that. There's never, and if you see in yourself that you can only ever do what you do in each moment, you can never make a different choice. Then you can completely understand the murderer or the paedophile. They could never have made a different choice. That anger and rage in them was so strong, was the only thing they could do.
Does that mean, for example, this person who has killed somebody out of this rage and all for a understandable reason, like you say, if this person would be very conscious and would be aware and already in that state of watching what is happening, not identifying with it, this person would still do this?
It depends how life writes it, because life would have to write that they would become more conscious or aware, and then it would write whether or not they do it. But there isn't a separate self who can become more conscious and aware of their actions. It's just whether life decides to express itself in that way of somebody thinking they become more conscious of their actions.
Yeah, I want to say something about that because I just had a very terrible incident with my father before I came in, and I was actually very aware because I was very worried. So I was in a very acute sense of awareness. And even though I was so aware of what I was saying, how I was phrasing it, I was just watching how this inevitably became such a collision with my father. And I even heard my voice in the head saying, oh, he's really hurt now, so I see this. And still this, we had a physical collision, like, was so much energy there. And my mother had to go between. And I thought, how could this happen? I was so aware, and I saw his pain, and I saw my pain too. So that my only understanding of it afterwards is what you said, is that something had to happen. That had to happen. Because a lot shifted in my family after that.
Mhm.
All the situations. My sister came, my mother came, and it became like chaos. It's like a whole dynamic different. And still is. And I don't know how it will be when I come home. But it's, it seems to be a very big element of something that maybe my whole life I was expecting this could happen. But I was like, oh, I'm not going to talk about this, because then we might have this. But now it was something in me, no, I'm not caring about it anymore. I just take it. Whatever comes, comes. And so this came. It was just like an old energy. And we were, and my mother said, but maybe we could have killed each other. I said, no. I was even like, oh my God, he's white in his face, and it's not good for his heart, and stop, it's like, it wasn't any like real present anger almost. It was like old. It was so strange. So I really think sometimes, I'm just taking it with me, I have to go now, but I really want to take that with me in my heart, that there is something deeper that follows through, and you can just witness it and think, oh my God, this is happening. And I thought I could have stopped it, but maybe not.
You never do anything differently from them. What happens? Ever.
And that's very humiliating. Not humiliating, humbling.
Humbling, yeah.
And humiliating for the ego.
Because most relationships are based on, they should be doing something differently, I should be doing something differently, I want them to be like this.
Yeah.
They can't be any other way than what they are. It doesn't mean that then change doesn't happen in the relationship, that you don't say I want this or I want that, but it's just no longer that energetic push.
I'm going to the doctor, perfect. Thank you.
Just one thing about that. You seem to talk about liberation as an event that happens in space and time. So that's more or less like one little subject, but added to the subject we're just talking. Can this event, or whatever it represents, happen with, for the murderer, for example, or the one who's been repressing and all that and knows that there's like a Jack the Ripper, as you call it, inside, still with the fear of this guy inside? Can fear of murdering someone, is that an obstacle to realizing true self, or not really? So they
However life wants to express it. Be anyway. The thing that goes though is that seeking energy.
that seeks in this example that who seeks for what? For like feeling the energy, letting it out, fearing killing someone.
No, what goes in liberation is the end of seeking.
But not the end of wanting to kill.
No, that would go too. However, killing could happen in the moment. Someone hits you, then you hit them back with a bottle. Killing could happen. That person could be dead. But wanting to kill is normally based on blame in space and time.
And the fear of that would go also.
I presume so. It depends. It's so different for everyone, but I presume.
But a lot of people have experience of going through the worst fears, and once this is seen as not too big or whatever, or we would call that purification, big opening happen that can lead or not to the final liberation or whatever we can call it. There seems to be like a relation between fear.
Look at your mind's trying to work it out.
Yeah.
Just because it wants to know how to get there. And how it can maneuver its way through the fear.
Or see if the old belief are still in place or stuff like this. Just check out. Because I understand that all meaning and understanding are nonsense. So these questions are about stuff that I still believe.
Thank you. Can I ask you if a person has this old anger inside from the past, maybe childhood, and if I work it out in a therapy, alternative energetic work, for example, where these emotions come up and maybe tears are falling, then it seems to be resolved, doesn't it? And during life, when I'm also conscious, maybe this anger doesn't come up and I don't need to kill somebody. Is that understandable? When so that at the same time means alternative working methods to release old emotions, which also give pain on the body or to some other people, is very useful. Maybe then it saves somebody's life.
It's useful for a better story.
For?
A better story.
Okay.
But not for liberation.
Okay. Doesn't it save somebody's life, for example, when there's so much anger?
Yeah, but we don't know. The person they killed might be a mass murderer. We don't know. We don't know that. That's
Okay.
just projecting into the future
So does it
of
mean
good or
that,
bad.
Yeah. So does it mean there is not really a use to get a better story and to release some feelings?
No, it's not useful or not useful. That's just part of the story. If it's to release emotions or release anger or change the character. But what I'm talking about is the end of seeking, the end of that I, the end of the belief in the separate self, not the end of being a difficult character or an emotional character, the end of the belief, the energetic belief in that separate self, which is different from therapy, because therapy is making a better character, a better story.
So after this,
But that might
what you-
happen.
yeah.
In the liberation story, there might be a going to a therapist as well. And that's too exactly how it's meant to be, and it's not wrong. But it's not liberation creating a better story. Liberation is the end of the belief in that story. And that story is the seeking energy,
So
the
it's-
I.
So it's not a helping to come to that liberation or to that emptiness, to clear, for example, the mirror,
Yeah.
to come to this inner, silent,
No.
lovely peace.
If life wants to express it, there's a clearing of the ego first, so it's a more stable ego, and that's how they express it. But if it wants to liberate someone who's highly neurotic, like I believe Eckhart Tolle was highly neurotic and in deep depression, and in his worst moments, everything fell away. I don't believe he'd been to therapy before. Maybe he had, but I know that he'd suffered from depression throughout his 20s. Or I read that. That's what he says. But if the urge comes up to doing it, I'm not saying don't do it at all. It's just that's how life's writing it, to go to a therapist or not go to a therapist.
Lisa, I had one more question. As we were talking before about how often the dynamic between, egos or personalities are like wanting to get something, from the other. There's always this kind of negotiation or trading that's going on. And Byron Katie also has a quote like, "Personalities don't love, they want something." And I also notice this too just in interactions a lot of the times with human beings, where there'll be a very, we were talking about value judgments before, like strong value judgments or hate, say for like a particular group of people. And unconsciously, like the kind of the normal paradigm that exists in our society is like automatically kind of just be there and like agree with the person, even though internally, there's not really like an agreement, or like you kind of don't even want to be part of that conversation at all. Like, for instance, if I were to like role play with you, say if I was like a good friend of yours who came to you one day and was like, "Lisa, my father was a pedophile, and he was just such a monster. You can't believe how what kind of a monster he was. He was just he did the worst things you could ever imagine. Like those freaks should just be burned at the stake, and we should, you should sign this petition now, that all like pedophiles should get the death sentence. So here's a pen, Lisa. Can you sign this here for me?" And like there's just like this energy of like agreeing with like that person's particular maybe value judgment or perception of life. So I'm just wondering, like in that situation, like how you would respond, so you're not sort of unconsciously agreeing with, say, this very strong perception maybe that the other has, and that unconsciously giving your energy to that perception and increasing the power of the ego or the personality, and maybe also unconsciously your own personality or ego in that situation. Because I notice I unconsciously agree sometimes in those situations because I'm afraid of confronting the person and saying like, "No, I'm not going to sign it," and then it's just going to be like, "What? Like, who the? What do you mean you're not going to sign it? Like, what kind of a person are you?
Yeah. I just don't see life like that. I don't see that I need to work out how to maneuver in life. There is no one here to work out. It just pops up that I either agree with someone or don't agree with someone, and there's no concern here as to whether I'm validating their ego or not. As to here, this ego, whether this ego is being validated or not, I too also don't care about that.
Okay.
Because